Did you see Ivy Nile versus Valerie Hala?
No.
Well, boy, they had a heck of a fight. They were working hard and laying it in, and you could hear a mouse pissing on cotton in the arena. And that's what you're talking about. Where's the crickets? Yeah, that sounded like Hogan slamming Andre compared to what they were getting here in this match.
You know, we talk about it with AEW a lot, but you have to be fair, it's WWE too. There's women that belong at the top of the card. Rhea Ripley, Charlotte Flair, Bianca Belair. Becky Lynch has proven herself to be there. If Sasha Banks was there, she's proven herself to be there. There are other people that fans react to. But then there's so many women, and it's almost exclusive to the women, where the crowds go silent. Because they're watching something because it's in front of them, not because it's something they wanted to see when they went there. Women's wrestling will never work if it's just being shoved down the throats of fans that weren't tuning in to see that.
Yes.
I think women's wrestling deserves a serious, well-funded promotion with top-flight women and not just filling up TV time with anyone you can get who's a body because they're not ready. I didn't watch this match. The fans who were in the building looked like they were watching it, but they didn't want to be there. And they dedicate
like they
so
were
much
the
TV
DMV.
time to it. They dedicate so much TV time to it. How much of it is because of the genuine demand for women's wrestling, and how much of it's for other reasons?
Are you insinuating that Ivy Nile and Valerie Hala have evidence on some of the higher-ups as to why they were able to get on this television program?
No, I'm insinuating that several years back when there was the big cry for give the divas a chance and then, get rid of the divas and make them serious, and Stephanie and Triple H were doing interviews about how they're making women the equal to men. It was something fantastic for publicity and as a talking point. And it's a wonderful idea in a perfect world. But the wrestling fans aren't there. You can't just shove an idea down people's throats. And for one reason or another, and there are plenty of reasons, women's wrestling in America was never at the level of popularity as men's wrestling, or of men's wrestling. And nothing changed. They started having more women on the shows, and people wanted to support the women that were on the shows. And again, there's a Rhea Ripley who is as talented a professional wrestler as anyone, man or female. Male or female, I should say. Or person. Whatever is going on out there.
Any of the genders.
But there's way too many that aren't up to snuff. And would it hurt women's wrestling if it was less segments, less time devoted to these segments, less women who are not ready being put in these positions, and just a smaller division made up of talented people that fans care about who can work? It's just, you don't see it with the men's division so much. Look, when Gargano and Ciampa came out on this show, the crowd was dead silent. That was frightening for them, because that's supposed to be a babyface tag team. They didn't get any reaction at all. But AEW and WWE have women's matches that aren't good, that are sloppy, and that fans don't even react to. They're silent. Or they're just looking at the wedgie that the girl went to the ring with. And it really has to be addressed at some point. I mean, WWE doesn't have to care, because they got all this money coming in. But that's why I said it from the beginning of AEW. Why do they have a women's division? Where's the demand for that? It still isn't there. You have like 20 fans that are like, we need the women to be presented better. And I'm like, well, we need them to learn how to fucking wrestle. How about you start with that? Present them better.
Well, let me bring this up. The idea was that in Japan, when they had the breakthroughs, the hot runs with either the dream pair, the beauty pair, or the crush gals or whatever, they're teen idol women's wrestling stars over there, that they inspired a bunch of young women to like wrestling and blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, if we have more women over here on the shows, then we'll get more female fans. When there were almost never any women on wrestling shows, the crowds in some, whether it Carolinas or Dallas in the day of the Von Erichs, whatever, was 50 to 60% female. Now the cards are 50 to 60% female, and there's almost no women in the audience. How does that work?
Yeah, that's the thing. You watch any of that All Japan women's stuff from the 80s, and some of that stuff's a lot sloppier than it became in the 90s, where really the women's wrestlers in Japan in the early 90s, maybe the biggest precursor to the style that a lot of guys work today in AEW or wherever. But in the 80s, Dump Matsumoto versus Chikasa Nagayo was a little sloppy at times. You got away with it because it was like a world-class crowd. It was screaming girls who cried when Chikasa got her head shaved. It was a different thing. It was a different audience. That audience has never been there in North America for women's wrestling. Now, no one's really tried it. Glow was a joke. I mean, we could all look back at it now and go, oh, the wonderful 80s. It was never a serious thing. The Jeannie Buss-funded Women's of Wrestling, or Women of Wrestling, whatever the hell it is.
The Women's of Wrestling.
Women's of Wrestling. Apparently the women's do pretty good numbers. I mean, they're in a bunch of markets, and they're also on Axis. I think they do better than Impact, which Axis owns, or the parent company owns, and New Japan.
You can't sell tickets to it.
But you can't sell tickets, and there's no hot audience. There's no people waiting to... You can't sell tickets, let alone you can't sell tickets to a bunch of women who want to be invested in it. So who's the audience? Your idea then is you're selling women's wrestling purely to men who are going to come and react how? It's just not there. Like, no one addresses it the right way. No one presents it the right way. And then you get a bunch of these women that show up in AEW, and who's telling them what to do? The agents there? The Chris Jerichos and people like that? It's put all over the TV shows, but there's very little foundation for the presentation and the way it's being done. I'm not saying get rid of women's wrestling. AEW shouldn't have a women's division. If you want to have matches on shows, do that. But you kill your own company by having your women's division.
Don't get rid of it. Get it under control and make it to where that it will draw money like the WWE have at the top. It will draw money, or don't do it, because then why?
You haven't seen Dynamite yet, right?
I have not.
When do you watch this Thunder Rosa match? Listen to the audience reaction. And I've liked Thunder Rosa in the past. Watch the actual match. Watch the work in this match. And she's one of the more polished people there. Watch that match. There are so many problems with women's wrestling that people don't really address because everyone's so busy being invested in how much time they get. But then you give them the time and the ratings drop and they're not good in the ring. And the people don't react to anything. It's not the chicken and the egg. It's the fucking chicken in the hen house.
It's the chick and the egg.
I guess so. Well, that's my women's wrestling rant for no reason.